Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 114 of Real Hawk Talk. This is Brian Nemhauser at Hawk Blogger on Twitter, and I've got a great crew with me tonight. For those that have been missing seeing her smiling face, we've got Dayna O'Gorman at Dayna OG on Twitter. Please send her all your best wishes as she's recovering from a little bit of an ankle surgery. So we want her to feel the best. And she's usually taking care of people. So hopefully someone's taking care of her. How you doing, Dayna?
I'm doing pretty good. Thank you very much. I look like I'm in a bed because I am in a bed, so I apologize for that. But yeah, things are, they're much better than they were a few days ago. So that's good.
Awesome.
And I get 5 weeks off of work. So
that's amazing.
That is, talk about a good time to maybe have time off of work. This might be the right time.
Exactly.
Yeah, and we appreciate your priorities. This show should absolutely be one of your top priorities. We are very happy to see you. As always, we've got Nathan Ernst at Nathan E11 on Twitter. Nathan, how you doing, man?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing okay. I'm doing a little bit of stress eating, not exercising very much. Still a little bit depressed and upset about the game this weekend. So other than those things, the heart's still beating. So I'm doing all right. Is that encouraging?
No, I mean, it sounds like you're mildly depressed, but at least you're in denial about it. So
yeah. It's all about coping mechanisms right now. I'm employing all the ones I can find. Speaking of coping mechanisms and mental illness, let's welcome in Evan Hill at Evan in SC.
What was that introduction?
That was the best Evan introduction ever.
Oh my God. That was like an all-time moment on the podcast. Speaking of horrible people and the last person you ever want to hear from, here's Evan Hill.
Oh, you are the first person that most of the people on the pod want to hear from.
I'm sure.
Because of your emotional instability that pulls people into your web. So, it's appreciated. How you doing, my friend?
I'm alive. I'm doing well and hanging in there. I'm excited to be here.
Good. Well, I think we know where we got to start. We had a post-game show for the first time this season following a loss, and it was an epic loss. We were not happy with what we saw. And one of the topics that we brought up in that podcast was, holy hell, there's no way that John Schneider and Pete Carroll watched that game where they played 5 quarters of football and did not have a single sack or a single quarterback hit, and I think had less than 5 pressures total.
They had somewhere between like 1 and 14 pressures, depending on where you
depends
look.
on who you're talking to, right? And they couldn't have seen all that happen and not make a move. And lo and behold, what happened this morning? The Seahawks traded for Carlos Dunlap, defensive end for the Cincinnati Bengals, longtime defensive end for the Bengals. And they gave up one BJ Finney. He has 0 snaps for the Seahawks. Expected to be the starting center. Ended up losing that job to Ethan Posick. And a 7th round pick. So this was a deal that we had talked about, at least a target we had talked about. It's definitely a need we had talked about. I want to hear from each one of you what you thought when you heard about the deal and what you think Carlos Dunlap means for this team. Dayna, I want to start with you on this one.
Sure. Well, I will say our chat was quite entertaining before we knew exactly what was going on. We had heard that Seattle was going to go after Dunlap and then we heard a few minutes later that it was going to be a player and a pick. And so then, of course, our speculation went off, the rocker and went a little crazy, and it was super fun. I don't think one of us picked Finney as the player that would go, as we were talking about different players that might be part of that trade. But I will say this, I'm thrilled with the trade. This to me shows, as much as some of our fellow real hawk talkers don't always like what John Snyder does, this is where he shows his brilliance, where he finds these players that Seattle needs desperately and that Seattle will use appropriately, we hope, for basically pennies. And that's no disrespect to Finney. Seattle just doesn't need Finney right now. Posick is playing very, very well. And how attractive is that going to be for the Bengals to get a player that was already in their division? And so it was just brilliant. The way he put this together. I have a friend, my friend Shona, who is actually a huge Seahawks fan from Scotland. And she says, Dayna, he did it again. And she put a picture of Dumbledore, because we always say, you're a wizard, John, because just sometimes the things that he does are wizardly. So I was thrilled with the terms and the way it came out. As for what Dunlap will bring, I think that's the question mark, because this year has not been his normal year. He has not looked like himself. And we can hope that was due to his unrest and unhappiness being in Cincinnati. As we've all heard, he put his house on the market at halftime of the last game. Like, he was out, like he's done. And so hopefully some of that production from the last couple of years where he's had fantastic production will show back up. And I will tell you, in some of the comments I was seeing within the Bengals community and the Bengals fans, they expect him to go back to being normal. They said, oh, Seattle is going to get the good Dunlap. He's going to work hard for them. He'll probably get a ring. And they were equally sad but happy for him at the same time, which I think says a lot about the type of player and the type of fan base that he had.
Yeah, no, we definitely saw that. We've seen since he came on and his Instagram saying he was something like scared as blank, I think, but really excited, something like that, to move over. Evan, what was your first, your gut reaction? The first thing when you saw the news break, what was your initial reaction?
Oh shit, what did we give up? Because I think we all deep down knew that they were going to make a move. We didn't know who, but I think we were all in agreement that they were going to do something. The terms of the trade, as came out later, as Dayna said, a 7th round pick, as well as BJ Feeney. That is an incredibly stupid, cheap, side of compensation from Seattle's perspective. Like, that's a 7th round pick. BJ was a backup, carried a semi-decent salary. Nathan, you're laughing. I don't know why you're laughing, but you're going to make me laugh. Nathan, are you okay?
No, yeah, I agree. I can't believe that they got him for BJ Feeney.
What's so funny?
No, nothing. It's incredible.
He's harassing you that his name is BJ Finney.
Finney?
Yes, it's okay.
No, don't lie. He's actually the son of Mr. Feeney from Saved by the Bell. Crap, I don't know.
As I was saying before my co-host distracted me, the compensation is just stupidly cheap. Like, they get to offload what ended up potentially being a bad contract, not a catastrophic contract or anything like that, but they did sign him to a 2-year $8 million deal. He's not a starter, so for a backup, that's not good money. So that's how they made the cap financials work. Before they trade, they had like $1.1 million in cap space per the official NFL wire. Carlos Dunlap's remaining salary or cap hit for the year is like 5.375. So offloading Finney, sort of equated that to, or at least close enough for them to not worry about it for now. So we are all sort of, as Dayna said, speculating as to who the player was that we were going to trade. I think there was, some talk about KJ, which felt like crazy talk. I think everybody thought of his salary, though. Jaren Reed was another person, but he's still young and sort of has potential. So I think, that's a super long-winded answer, but I don't know how you can't be ecstatic with this trade. Like, Seattle got a player who was an elite defender in 2019, like an elite defender, like top 10 pass rusher last year. He had something like probably close to 50% of, so he had, I think it was 8.5 sacks last year. what would have that been in terms of like Seattle's total sacks last year?
I mean, more than twice their leading sacker.
Exactly. So it's like it's a pretty good deal. Even if he like shits the bed and doesn't do anything, like you really can't complain about the compensation.
It's funny you say ecstatic. That was not my reaction.
Why?
I don't think the Seahawks are Carlos Dunlap away from solving their problems on defense. And so I was happy. I was definitely happy and like, pleased with the deal, pleased with moving things around. For me, there's unfinished business. This feels like step one. I still think there's more to come.
But Brian, doesn't this sort of feel, so I completely agree with what you just said. But don't you feel like this sort of feels like a recognition from them that like finally they're admitting that like, you know what? We kind of fucked up. Like, doesn't it kind of feel like that? Like, remember all of Pete Carroll's comments in the offseason where it was like, oh no, we have a ton of confidence in our guys. Like, blah, blah, blah. Don't you feel like this kind of changes that dynamic?
I wish
attitude?
it said blah, 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 because that would have made more sense than what they said most of the offseason regarding their pass rush. So Nathan, yes. I mean, I want to get to you on this too. We talked about this all offseason, and we knew that this pass rush wasn't good enough. For whatever reason, the team thought it was. And even today, Pete Carroll said something along the lines of losing Bruce Irvin was a massive loss. And I'm like, really? I mean, it was a loss. I think to say that was a massive loss is a real generous stretch.
I feel there's a little selective amnesia all of a sudden here, Brian. Like, me and you were both, start of the year arguing that this pass rush should be better than it was last year, right?
Yeah.
And you made the bet on it. So, this idea that like losing Bruce Irvin was nothing.
No, not nothing, but a massive loss.
I think what you're trying to say is Evan was right.
No.
Yeah. Sure sounds like it.
No. I mean,
you were more right. You were more right than we were. That's for sure.
Okay. Well,
you've definitely proven out. You've proven out right. I mean, this pass rush has not worked, right? I mean, one of the things that we were saying when we said that the pass rush could be better was that you were going to have more bodies, more quality pass rushers than last year, and that you could manufacture more pass rush than having like just Clowney, right? And we argued last night about this or I did at least with Ben a little bit about how important Quentin Jefferson was and some of that stuff. But that was the idea, right? And so you look at what's happened this year so far. Irvin got hurt, Green got hurt, Taylor hasn't gotten right. So, that's three guys that we were looking at as, contributors and they've all been out. And so that whole theory of, you kind of swung and missed a little bit in free agency, but you do at least have like something here, right? There's an idea here. And that quickly went away, right? And then the big risk was, well, what is Mayo going to do with the full-time role? And who knows exactly why, but it looks like he's going to do very little with a full-time role, right? I mean, he's imploded so far this year. So, I think that there's a lot of opportunity for this defense to get better now. And I think that, had Dunlap been a free agent in this offseason and they had acquired him, in August or whatever, or July or whatever, I think he would have been a second tier free agent, right? He's not like a Quinn or Fowler, and Quinn hasn't been good, but just talking about perception at the time, like Fowler or some of those other really top-notch guys. But he would have been like that next tier of.
I think it would have been like JPP level, honestly.
I think we would have been excited, right, if they had signed him.
One of my favorite parts of this deal, sorry to jump in there, Nathan, is that this isn't necessarily a one-year rental. He's under contract for next year, and let's say he's good this year. I think it's like,
let me pull it up.
11 million next year or something, but it's like,
so they're not on the hook for his signing bonus because the Bengals have paid that. So it's $10.6 million is what they will owe him next year.
That is very, that's very reasonable if he is a starting quality edge rusher. That's like a deal. So to me, that's the thing I'm most interested in here, because every year before this year, he has been one of the top 25% of edge rushers in the NFL pretty much every year.
So you're adding him in now, right? He's an upgrade over Bruce. You're getting Rasheem Green back. So maybe you can rotate Mayo a little bit, and maybe that helps him get back to his production level, where he was the last year or two. So maybe ecstatic is too strong of a word, but I think that this could have a big impact on the defense. It's not going to fix it, right? Because that secondary has problems, right? Dunbar has been iffy. Flowers has been straight bad. Quill is hurt right now. We'll see what happens when they get Adams back there too. But it's not a silver bullet for their problems. But I think it could, even though he's not like a star player, and even though they have it's going to take more than one player to fix this. They have more than one player that they're adding in at this point. So I think there's a lot of reasons for optimism.
I get really excited, Dayna, when Nathan is optimistic.
I'm always wrong.
It doesn't happen very often.
That is that's reason to get a little bit excited.
Well, and we can't forget either that our dear Jeff Simmons, who's not here with us, he told us to put out there how excited he is about this trade. He loves it. So between both of them being excited,
yes,
that's pretty exciting.
I mean, that's Canadian excitement. You've got Ernst excitement. Like, this is a big deal.
I wanted to qualify my ecstatic word a little bit further. The reason I said ecstatic is because I don't think it's going to be the last pass rush move they make. It feels like they're admitting publicly, like defeat in a way, that they needed to bring in somebody from the outside, whether it's due to injury or whatever, just not being good enough or not executing well enough. It doesn't feel like they're done. I'll just say that. And I feel like another move is coming. And for that feeling, for that gut feeling, it leaves me being ecstatic, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean,
so it's not just that move in isolation, if that makes sense. Like
it does. And I mean, I think it doesn't need to be said, but I'm going to say it anyway. And you guys can all just shake your heads at me. But the reality is, we've been here before many times where the Seahawks make a move for a player that has had production somewhere else and maybe is not producing as much. And you hope that they get here and all of a sudden it turns around. And more times than not, those moves have not worked out for the Seahawks. More times
that's true of this type of moves. There's two Seahawk trades.
Okay.
What are the categories, Nathan?
Are you talking like the Quandre Diggs type of trade versus the Sheldon Richardson type?
Yeah. So we're talking the good trades versus the bad trades.
Right. There's the big splash trades, right? Percy Harvin, Jimmy Graham, Sheldon Richardson, Dwayne Brown, right?
So you're admitting that Jimmy Graham was a major failure?
No, he was very good for them, but he was not what he was supposed to be, obviously, right? They never did figure out a way to work him in the offense because Pete was too stubborn to actually pass the ball all the time. But then there's these other ones, right? Especially these player trades, right? Like the Clinton McDonald, the Quandre Diggs, right? I think there's probably one or two more that we could talk about.
Chris Clemens
to some degree, right? I mean, some of these, not all these mid-season, but
not mid-season, it's true.
Yeah. But yeah, and this one fits more into that category, right? Of the buy low type thing that has worked out pretty well for them.
Yeah, so I get that in terms of you're not going to regret making this trade, period. There's no way you were going to regret making this trade. So to that extent, I totally agree. My point is, I think it's reasonable to temper some expectations that this guy who has one sack on the year, we are counting on the fact that he was not happy there. He was not motivated there, that's the reason he was not producing, and that he can turn it on and be a difference maker. And if not right away, at that point, the rest of the season. That's what we're counting on. But I think it's worth acknowledging there's no guarantee that that's the case.
But I think we have to kind of qualify that too, to a certain extent of, do we want 10 sacks out of him? Of course we do. We'll be happy. Will we be happy with 5? We'd be happy if he just starts rushing the passer. I mean, seriously. Yeah, I mean, at this point, any help is good help. And I think that we have to keep that in mind, especially for what this trade cost us, which was basically nothing.
I'm happy with 2 sacks, 3
Yeah,
sacks.
I'd be good with 4.
I would take a sack in a house. I would take a sack with a mouse. Like,
I like it. Yeah, I mean, and the other thing I do like about this is like there's a lot of potential options they could have gone after with this that could have been more expensive, or like I know Evan, you're big on Takk McKinley. I'm way more excited about Carlos Dunlap than I would have been about Takk McKinley, and they still might get Takk McKinley, but McKinley's younger. Dunlap is a much more professional pass rusher than McKinley's ever proven to be.
Sure.
So,
I don't disagree at all.
And I think McKinley would have cost more probably too. And so like, as far as the options of who they could have gotten, Dunlap was right near the top for me. I mean, Kerrigan's up there as well. Was there someone else that you guys were like hoping they would have said they would have acquired instead of Dunlap that was higher on your list as far as a pass rusher?
Well, I know what your answer is going to be, Brian.
Dunlap was pretty much the top of my list. What do you think my answer is going to be?
There was a lot of conversation in our chat room about Aldon Smith,
Yes.
and I know that conversation is valid. I think that there's still enough question marks around that. I don't know that I would have put him at the top of my list, but I think it's definitely a valid option.
Yes. So to clarify, I've been the person banging the drum for Aldon Smith. The reason he wasn't at the top of my list is because if I'm factoring in feasibility that he was really available, I'm not sure he was.
True.
But yeah, like I think he would have been pretty much. He's also only $1 million. Like he would even be less than that for the rest of this year. So he's super cheap. Yeah. And I just think that would have been a nice deal. Still might happen. Who knows? Evan, how about you? And Nathan, do you guys have anyone that you were like, yeah, if it had been someone else, you would have gotten more excited than hearing Dunlap? Or is it pretty much like, they're all the same. Just give me one of them.
No, I don't remember who got traded yesterday.
Everson Griffin.
Griffin got traded yesterday, yeah. And I was kind of, we talked about this, and I was kind of mad about it. I wasn't too sad about missing out on him. And Jeff asked who I wanted of everyone, and Dunlap was my guy. So
that's true.
I'm really happy about it.
Yeah, I don't think there's a huge difference among the players available right now, unless you're talking like a JJ Watt. But I think
I was gonna say, yeah.
But I think that's a completely different compensation, right? Like he's not going to be a first round pick, but he's also not going to be a 7th round pick. So,
well, that salary, I don't know that you're going to get. Like, I think JJ Watt. Let's talk about that for a second. I mean, people are curious. One, his salary is insane, so I can't imagine that it's even doable. But let's
let's frame that. To pay him for the rest of the year, it would be $10 million about for 2020.
Would you swap Jaren Reed?
I knew you were going to ask that. I knew it.
Of course you would. 100%.
Where do I sign? Where do I sign? I'm actually surprised to hear Brian say that.
Hold on.
Long time Jaren Reed defender.
Hold on.
Number one Jaren Reed fan, Brian.
Yeah, big time.
I'm not even arguing with you about that because I'm on record and I'm comfortable with my record on the Jaren Reed situation. But I was shocked today that how many people, when I said the names that it could have been for Dunlap in exchange to get salary, Jaren Reed, he's the most salary that was realistic. I think it's $5 million that you could save if you traded Jaren Reed. And then LJ Collier was another name I threw out there. I think he's $2 or $3 million. And there were people just standing for both of those guys. LOL, there's no way they're trading Jaren Reed. He's young and he's got so much potential. I'm like, he was young years ago. He had his season. This was the year that he had reasonably to come back and prove that potential was going to be something that was sustainable. He has not proven at all. So I don't know what anyone else is waiting for. There's not some other shoe to drop with Jaren Reed. He is who he is. And LJ Collier, people are like, oh man, he was injured last year. His trajectory is like through the roof. I think that people's perceptions are skewed by the trajectory of this defensive line is basically like a flat line. So anyone that's even a little bit better than last year looks, I don't know. There's not a single person on the defensive line, maybe Poona Ford, but just maybe, that I would really bat an eye if the Seahawks included them in a deal for almost anybody, even if it's a 1-year rental. There's nobody on this defensive line who I'm like, gotta have him next year. Core player.
Brian Monet.
Being too harsh? Are there guys that you guys are like, that's crazy?
I cannot imagine there's a trade that makes a lot of sense for Brian Monet. Not because he's amazing or anything, but because he looks pretty good and is like dirt cheap. Like, that's not a guy you trade.
Fair. He's there's such little that you could get for him, and he is the only guy that's outperformed his contract and his expectations on the defensive line. Fair. But like Jaren Reed, like Dayna, I mean, you're as positive of a person as we have on this show, and we love you for it. Would you like have any hesitation if tomorrow you find out they've traded Jaren Reed and they get Geno Atkins instead of JJ Watt?
Yeah, my hesitation with that first conversation was JJ Watt, and it's not that he's not the absolute Hall of Fame superstar that he is. It's just that for some reason he can't ever make it a whole season on a field, and so it's like, would that risk be worth the cost? Yeah, maybe for a couple of games. Like if we could get him for like this next couple of weeks of divisional games, heck yeah, bring him on. But long term, I don't know that that's really logical or viable. So he seems the type, and I don't know JJ Watt, but that another shortened season or another injured year and he'll be done. And on his own account, he'll decide to. So I just don't know that would be logical. You start looking around the league. Sure. There's a lot of players I think that you could trade for. And would I bat an eye at losing any of them? No, not really. None of them, on the line itself. Of course, I threw a little fit in chat today when the KJ was brought up, just because he's played better this year than we've seen him in years.
That would be crazy.
Illogical to get rid of him. It makes no sense whatsoever, especially since he's on the last year of his deal anyway. And so that doesn't make a ton of sense to me. But when you get to the line and you look at, I think even I'd include Poona in that. Not that I like the way Poona is playing this year, but I think there isn't anyone that would be horrifically missed if they ended up on a chopping block somewhere for some other team. But in the same turn, what team, I know that there's illogical teams out there, but what team would want anyone from this line when they've been struggling so badly? I don't think that there would necessarily be a market for any of them right now.
Yeah, and the only other guy I think we've talked about, Evan, correct me if I'm wrong, if there's other cap options, is Jacob Hollister. There's people saying, oh, don't trade Jacob Hollister. Guys, like we've got Will Dissly and Greg Olsen and Luke Wilson, whatever Luke Wilson's worth. And you've got Colby Parkinson, who's just coming off the injured list. Jacob Hollister is like an easy decision to move on. Yes, I mean, I like Hollister. I'm happy we have him. I think he has good rapport with Russell. But heck yeah, you move a guy where you have a surplus in order to improve anything on the defense right now.
I have a question for you, Brian. This you asked the cap thing, and it got me looking at their roster. Would you consider, because the Seahawks are limited in draft ammo, would you consider moving Quandre Diggs for a pass rusher?
I would consider it at this point.
Like I'm talking like an equal.
Because I think you've got DJ Reed coming off the injured list that could potentially slide in at either safety or at nickel corner. I'm not saying I love that move or it would be one of my top 5 things. Would I consider it? Potentially. I mean, it really depends on what you're getting in return.
Yeah, I'm just curious because he carries a semi-big salary this year of, $5.2 million. And do you guys all agree that he's not outperforming expectations? He's been kind of quiet, it feels like. Yeah,
I think that has somewhat, and I'm a big Diggs fan. You guys know that, but I I think that is somewhat of a reflection of the rest of the defense. That line has not played well enough for him to be able to do his job properly. But does that excuse it? No, of course not. But we got real excited when we saw what he could do last year. And maybe if we get the right pieces back in place, he'll be able to cover that span and do his job again.
I guess my question is the drop off from Quandre Diggs, so this defense with Quandre Diggs, to like a Ryan Neal and a Jamal Adams back there, an equivalent pass rusher, in talent perspective. I'm making a lot of assumptions here, but do you see what I'm saying? Like if we shifted the resources.
I don't think Ryan Neal is an option. They're different safeties. The only guys that could potentially be a replacement for Diggs would maybe be Reed or Ugo. Those are the only two guys that could potentially slide in at free safety. I think it's a big risk. Even Quandre Diggs being like mediocre this year, I think is at least, he's going to be assignment correct, which is, it's at least something.
Evan's favorite thing, assignment correct players.
Yeah.
There's just really not any other salary options in terms of moving players outside of Jacob Hollister.
It was interesting. I had someone ask me on Twitter today. They said, Dayna, how did Seattle get here? How did they get so tight with their cap space and so tight with their draft picks? Because it seemed not too long ago that we had plenty of both, and that just quickly disappeared, and kind of put us in the space where we're like, well, can't do that. There's not room. Can't do that. There's not room. And I know every team goes through that. It just seemed like quite a shift for just being this many weeks, into the season.
Well, many of the deals they made this offseason were short in length. So the cap hits are very high up front. I'll give you an example. I'm looking at Greg Olsen. I mean, he cost $7 million this year. In one hit. That's when we were starting off the offseason with like 50 million in cap space or whatever. So that's like almost 20% of that. They gave Jaren Reed a ton of money. Carlos Hyde's contract is bigger than anticipated. It's like 4.5 million on a 1-year deal.
Hollister is like 3.5.
Hollister's 3.5. BJ, Finney was 4 million this year. Like it just adds up, and the short length of the deals,
But my question to you then, because I remember you guys were complaining, not that you ever do that, boys, you never complain, but you guys might have been complaining that they had money to spend. They needed to spend the money.
Yeah.
So they spent the money. And so now we're in this situation. I don't know. I find it fascinating that it's such a tightrope, and I'm not trying to, bail out a front office. We all know how hard that job is, but that balance is something that's really hard. And you do end up making decisions about players like Hollister, but players like that I think that they just have to be made sometimes.
I get at what you're saying. And I think the argument, at least Nathan and I would make, probably Brian too, is that yes, they spent money, but they didn't spend it in the right places. Like they gave Jaren Reed and what's his face?
Irvin and Mayo.
And all those guys, like we're talking up to like $28 million in.
But I think we're painting with one brush. I would say
because next year that all goes away.
They did not spend properly on the defensive line. They didn't have a complete plan on the defensive line. I don't think Mayo and Irvin, even you, Evan, were like okay with those signings. We just wanted a alpha pass rusher, and they never got that person.
Yeah.
And so that was one piece. As far as the other, like they spent on offensive line, like Brandon Shell, Mike Body, those were good places to spend that money. And Brandon Shell, I think, has been one of I think you go across the league, he might be one of the best free agent signings in the whole NFL. Like for the money he signed for and for the role he's playing. And this is coming from a guy that was incredibly skeptical.
Yeah, we got to eat some crow on that one.
They nailed the offensive line.
Huge L.
Yeah.
They nailed the offensive line because Shell has been, he hasn't been great, but he's been a starter quality right tackle, which is just unbelievably nice, right? And then Apati's been fine. And then, Finney didn't work out, but he was a player that had enough value, even though he didn't work out here and didn't end up starting, that they were able to include him in a trade, and a team was interested in him as like a positive asset. So I think, I think what you said is right, Brandon. We wanted them to spend big, right? And then, a couple big signings, and it wasn't just defensive line. We talked about was it Conklin, or who was it that was available on the offensive line? There was a couple guys. Bulaga, yes. Yeah. So a couple guys on the offensive line that we were talking about. What?
Beluga. Sorry, continue.
Did I say Beluga?
No,
I said
Evan did.
Oh.
You say the names right, Nate.
Okay. All right. That tracks. Okay. Anyway, so yeah, I think the thing that we were hoping they would do is that they would go big in a couple places and then find a bunch of filler, right? But no matter what they were going to do, they were going to have to spend all their money this year. Cause we talked a lot about okay, well, if they spend a ton of money on Clowney and someone else, what are they doing on offensive line? If they spend money on the offensive line, they have 0 to 10 defensive tackles, and ended up they paid Reed, and Monet was good. So there was no way that they were going to come out of that offseason without having spent up most all of that money.
Yeah, and we won't go into full offseason review. I mean, I still am a fan of the Jamal Adams deal and a fan of the Quentin Dunbar deal. And there's other things that they did that I think were positive. I think it's easy to but the pass rush plan was flawed, majorly flawed. And I think that's just proven true. And I think whether they're going to acknowledge it or not, that's what's happening now. They're having to go out and make these deals. And I don't think they're done. Before we move off of this, because we do have to start talking about Jamal Adams and this game coming up and the injury situation, because it's a long list, folks. By a show of voices here, is there anyone here that thinks they're done trading? That your bet is that they're not going to make another move?
I'll bet that.
Okay. Is it because you just think it's going to be unlikely, or that they're not even trying to make another move?
That it's unlikely. They might end up picking up a Dontari Poe type cut or something like that, but I don't know that they'll pull off another trade at this point.
Yeah, they said today there was a report that Poe got cut because he was too fat. He couldn't get his weight down or something. I was like, oh, for good Lord, Jerry Jones.
Part of the deal, though? Isn't that part of the appeal of Dontari Poe?
Oh my gosh! Yeah.
Thank God, my office doesn't have similar rules. Given my eating habits the past few weeks, so let's shift and talk a little bit about injury situation. So I'm going to quickly run down the Seahawks injury situation and their injury report that was listed today for folks that haven't heard this. Running back, a little bit more sitting back or something. There's not a lot of running going on in the Seahawks backfield. Chris Carson, midfoot sprain, did not rule him out for this game, but will not actually get to the field until the end of this week. Okay. Can talk about it. My guess is he's going to try to play. Chris Carson's been clear that his goal is to play in every game this year and to lose the label of being injury prone. We'll see. Carlos Hyde did not practice. Hamstring. Does not sound like it's super serious, but he did not practice. Travis Homer, bruised knee, did not practice today. So there are your top 3 running backs, none of whom practiced. DJ Dallas also showed up on the injury report with an arm injury. He did practice, full participant, but he did show up on the injury report. So on the running back position, something that I will add that's come up, the Seahawks can't pick up a running back and play him this week. Due to the COVID rules and all those things, they're stuck with who they've got. So they are talking about, quote, creative thoughts. And the expectation there is that would be either Penny Hart, who played running back in high school, wide receiver, or David Moore as options as filling at running back.
Who used the word or the phrase creative thoughts?
Who do you think?
Was it Pete Carroll?
Of course it was Pete Carroll.
That's so funny.
Yes.
I just had a vision of some big fat defensive tackle coming up, just taking
I just want to say, when you look at the injury report like this and you have so many players that are on it, I'm just so thankful that they spent a first round pick on a reliable, the most healthy running back that they've ever seen.
Ryan,
Best medical grades a player could get. So, even when the world's falling apart like this, you have
the health
Rashad
analytics
Penny to rely on. You have Rashad Penny right there, Mr. Reliable, always available, ready to carry the rock.
My heaven.
It's just nice. It's just nice to have that backstop there,
Nathan, I was going to say Travis Homer is out or potentially, or he's injured. Does that not concern you? Like, is the game not over already?
I don't know her. I don't know her.
The sarcasm is very deep, boys.
Yes.
Very deep.
So folks that don't know, Nathan has some ideas about Travis Homer. We won't go into that scale at this point, but I will note for the Twitter masses who got into it, Travis Homer gets snaps because he is a good blitz pickup, pass protecting running back. He got a horrible pass protecting grade in Arizona, so he did poorly. Everyone noticed that DJ Dallas, I think, also did really poorly in blitz pickup, almost got Russell destroyed. So yeah, that's an issue. I don't think Travis Homer did much to help his case last week on that front. Let's keep going on injuries because there's more. Mike Iupati, back, did not practice today, did not practice last week, did not play. I think this is 2 weeks in a row now. So I think this is something to be concerned about, that at least this might turn into something more serious. Quentin Dunbar did not practice, but it's just resting vet, so I'm not worried about that. Shaquille Griffin did not practice today in the concussion protocol. Guys, in my experience, when someone's in the concussion protocol still on Wednesday, the likelihood of them playing on Sunday is pretty low. How concerned are you about the potential absence of Shaquille Griffin for this defense?
I'm inoculated it at this point. Like,
okay,
I've been hurt enough by Trey Flowers that I don't feel anything anymore.
Can't hurt me anymore, Trey.
I just want to see points. I'm going to see some points. Points are fun.
Points are fun.
How much?
Not fun when they're against us, man. They're not fun.
I'm going to pose a question. I'm going to pose a question. Trey Flowers is very bad at playing football, okay?
Not a question.
Well, no, the question is coming, nerd, okay? How much worse is the defense going from Shaquille Griffin to Trey Flowers? Like, is it significantly worse?
Yeah.
I don't know if I buy that. I don't know if I buy that.
You are so down on Shaquille Griffin because he started off the season poorly. And
yeah, I am. 100%.
You had been super out over your skis on Shaquille Griffin. They should sign
100%.
So you're hurt personally about Shaquille Griffin. You've lost your objectivity.
Correct.
He's played pretty darn well since then. Yeah. Yeah.
I think he actually really has to, because this defense, I mean, it's gotten better, but it's not a super structurally sound defense at all times, right? And we've seen Dunbar get burned by it a little bit, right? And obviously Quill struggled with it early. And he just hasn't been a problem for like 4 or 5 weeks now. And he had a really good game in there too against Miami, right? So I think he's actually, I mean, the pendulum has swung so far on him, right? Where we were all super high on him as a rookie, and then we were all super down on him as a sophomore player, and then, he's great again, and then he had a couple bad games and he's terrible, and oh my God, are they even going to re-sign him? And now I think it's swung back the other way, where I think he's a little underrated and we're maybe not quite appreciating that. I mean, of the healthy secondary players, like, he's easily the best, right? I mean, he's the one that you don't actually have to worry about.
I would take Dunbar over Shaquille, actually, but it's not like by a lot. So I mean, Shaquille is not. I'm not going to make the case that he's like great. Mm-hmm. I just think he has been acceptable, and he's not been the major problem. He's not been the one getting picked on. When Trey Flowers comes into the game, he immediately is targeted. Last game against Arizona, he came in for one play. They threw deep. DeAndre Hopkins was open 5 yards, and Kyler Murray just, I mean, he's just bad. He is not NFL. I don't think he can play right now. And so I think it's a huge issue. The only thing that makes me feel a little bit better about him potentially missing is that the 49ers are missing Deebo Samuel.
Mm-hmm.
In Seattle's last 3 games, for what it's worth, Pro Football Focus has graded Trey Flowers above Shaquille Griffin in 2 out of those 3 games.
That site can have flaws.
So you disagree with the grading?
I do. They actually graded Trey Flowers well against Arizona.
They did.
And that is batshit crazy. Like I don't know how and by what measure they could have ended up with a good grade for Trey Flowers in that game. So I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm like, I don't see every play the way that they do, but every time I saw him in the screen, his player was open or making a play.
Well, so they graded him super high in the tackling category, and we do know that tackling was an issue on Sunday.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, he has been a consistent tackler for the most part.
Yes.
Yeah, because he's had a lot of opportunities to get graded.
Guys often has the ball in his hands. Guys, we're not done. Ugo Amadi, hamstring, did not practice. That's a
problem.
Yes. So we're talking about 2 out of the 3 starting corners. Benson Mayowa, ankle, did not practice. Freddie Swain, hamstring, did not practice. Now, the big one for me, Jamal Adams. Pete Carroll said he was going to practice in a limited fashion. He did not practice today. What the hell is going on with Jamal Adams? Dayna, what's going on?
He'll be fine, Brian. Fine.
When?
The 4-letter F word version of fine.
You'll say he's fine as he's being laid down into a coffin in the ground. Like, I want to see him play football. I want to see the man play football.
We all know groins are tricky. We understand that there's no timeline for them. I get it. What I'm not understanding is the kind of disconnection with Pete saying today that he was going to practice limited and then he didn't. Makes you think that he had a setback, but they didn't say that there was a setback. But as we know, Pete's been a little wackadoodle this year about the whole injury report and if they're going to play and they don't, and he was like hopping around questions. Here's the thing. I don't want Jamal Adams to play until he is 100%, just because I think that the second half of this season is a little more important. Now, I know we're in a really bad crunch, and I know we have that ridiculously easy stretch that Seattle has, but then you get down to those end of season games and the playoffs. I want Jamal Adams healthy. I don't think we will have any idea what the potential of this defense is, though, until he is on the field continuously. Like, I'm talking multiple games in a row. Now, well, I know, right? And I'm not being sarcastic. It's true. It's like we need to see what's going on there. But it is interesting because wherever he is at, they have on the depth chart, they have Ryan Neal and safety and cornerback. And so he could fit in. Then there's always Randall that can fit in. But I think that we're all just waiting. We're waiting for Jamal Adams to come back. We want him to play against the Niners. We all do. Do I think he has a chance this week? Yeah. And I know I don't take Wednesday injury reports near as seriously as you guys do. I'm going to be real honest with you, except for when it comes to concussions. I do completely agree with you there, Brian. But I think that, we're just going to have to wait and see. And that sucks. It completely sucks. But let me tell you, I'd be real happy to see Adams against the Bills because we're definitely going to need him there.
Yeah. And for everyone that's freaking out in the chat pod, yes, he was listed as missing practice with groin/illness. So everyone that's assuming that he missed practice because the illness had nothing to do with the groin is basing that off of just the injury report. There's no confirmation from anybody that he missed practice due to illness. And so until he practices, the point of the fact is, until he practices, he's not going to play. That's the point. Mm-hmm. So I personally believe he could be the difference between winning and losing this weekend. I think against this particular offense and the style of offense they play, a lot of their plays are within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage. And a player like Jamal Adams is custom built for a game like this. I think without him, I think it's going to be a lot tougher. A lot tougher. And that might sound obvious, but I think in particular, this game, he is key. So that's the name, even more than Shaquille Griffin. That's the name I've got my eye on. All right, guys, that was the injury report. It only took half the show to go through the Seahawks injury report. Is anybody kind of oddly hopeful that we get to see DJ Dallas, at running back? Like, I would kind of like that. Anybody? Am I on my own here?
I mean, why not? We got to see what the kids got, right? I mean, let's do it. Throw them in there. Trial by fire. Let's go. Why not? I mean, they're not running the ball that much anyway, right? You guys want Russell to throw. And so why not just throw him in there, see what he can do?
I was going to say, you must be really excited for his 3 carries that he's going to get on Sunday.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's true.
Because our head coach is analytically minded now and radicalized and an extremist.
Unless it's 3rd and 2. And then Damian Lewis. By the way, you saw what happened. Have you guys seen the play on the All-22 and seen what happened there?
Yes.
The play call may not have been as bad as it looked. Our rookie stud right guard decided to run into our center instead of blocking his man. So that sucked. Nathan, let's take some patron questions for folks that haven't already. Please sign up at patreon.com/PawkBlogger. $5, you get immediate access to our Slack channel. We take questions every week. We appreciate it. And as you know, we're saving up for charity and making a big donation this year. And while we're talking about things that you should absolutely do, please vote. We're in the great experiment known as the American democracy. Make your voice heard. Do not wait for election day. It's going to be a nightmare probably. So get out there, vote, and take part in America and what we're doing here in the United States. And that's part of why we don't have Jeff on this week. We didn't want to hear his Canadian bullshit. So
meh.
We love you, Jeff.
Poor Jeff.
We love you, Jeff.
Poor Jeff.
All right, Nathan, hit us with, let's do rapid fire, 1 question per person, and other people can jump in if they feel absolutely like they need to add their 2 cents.
Okay. I was ready for this and then I was not. So a couple people asked, and I'll throw this one to you, Dayna. So with the addition of Dunlap and getting Green back soon, who is gonna lose snaps or potentially get cut? So Tyler Giraldes and sorry, somebody else has to, but you're not getting a shout out. CJ maybe. Nope, somebody else. Anyways, Dayna, what do you think? Who's losing snaps, and do you think anyone gets cut?
All right, I'm so sorry. I was listening, but I only was so when who's coming back? I'm so sorry.
So with adding Dunlap and then Green coming back soon, who's going to lose snaps in that? Whose snaps are those?
I mean, the first couple of games I haven't looked at it in a while, but the first couple of games wasn't Benson Mayowa basically playing every single snap. Like at one point, wasn't he playing it?
Yeah, somebody tweeted today that he is 6 in total snaps for defensive linemen, despite having played 1 less game than most defensive linemen.
Right. It was like a ridiculous number. So we're going to assume that obviously Mayo is going to come out and, that we'll have Dunlap come in and use that rotation just a little bit more. With Green, I'm not sure what that's going to be. I think that I don't, and you guys haven't said this, so I'm just going to say this and you can tell me I'm terribly wrong. But I just don't trust that he's going to be ready anytime soon. I don't think that's going to be an impact that we're actually going to see for a handful of games still. I know they have to put him back on the roster within 3 after this week, right? Within 3 games after 3 weeks after this. But I still think that he gets pushed out for a while. I think that maybe if he makes it, he's not going to make a huge impact. So I wouldn't worry about anyone, taking over those snaps. It's not like he's going to come in and play, he's not going to become an every down guy. He's just not. I don't think that that's what it's going to be. But for Dunlap, we can hope that there's a little better rotation and I know Brian hates it when I use the word rotation. I just remember the really, really good Seahawks defensive teams used a lot of rotation, and I think that that's what we're missing a little bit. But I would assume that, Mayo won't make it through the whole season if he's playing 90%, 99% of the snaps. He's just not going to do it.
Brian has no clue asks.
I thought you said Brian has no clue.
That's also true.
That was
I didn't plan that, but that was good. Why isn't DK being used on more sweeps and screens and short passes?
Oh, I'm so glad you gave me this question. It's a great question. So I have 2 different answers on this one. So one, it is absolutely inexcusable that they are not throwing him more screens. He breaks tackles. He is a straight line speed guy. It's an easy way to get him the ball. It just makes no sense. And so I absolutely believe that they need to do it more. Will they do it more? Who knows? Jet sweeps, though, is the other thing people ask about with this. That's very different. And I think it's a different skill set and a different body type. DK Metcalf, for all the things he does really well, cornering is not necessarily one of them. That was why he fell to the Seahawks in the first place in the draft. And so, you want a jet sweep guy to be someone more like Tyler Lockett that can take it at full speed and turn the corner. I don't know that DK is custom built for that. So I don't know that I'm cheering for or hoping to see him get more jet sweeps. I am absolutely hoping to see that he gets more wide receiver screens.
Evan,
David Moore stops holding.
David Moore is the one that needs to get more carries. You mentioned that, right?
He's perfect for that. Absolutely.
Evan, there was one in here for you, and I've lost it. It's a really good one too. Okay, I'll keep looking.
I've got one that was on chat that it can be for Evan if you want.
Yeah, go for it.
This was someone, I can't remember who his name was, but he donated on Super Chat, so we appreciate it. Evan, percentages. What percent fault do you apply to John Schneider and to Pete Carroll for the state of the pass rush?
95% John Schneider. 5%. I don't even know if Pete Carroll deserves a single percentage point. John Schneider is in charge of loading this roster with talent, and he had opportunity after opportunity after opportunity after opportunity to improve the pass rush. It is completely insane that they're in this situation right now, 15 months later or whatever it is, because remember, it was absolutely atrocious last year too, and they waited all offseason and did nothing. So long-winded answer, 95% John Schneider.
All right, I found your question too from the Patreon chat. So Jonathan Taylor asks, are they only letting Russ cook so they don't have to rely on Jason Myers' field goals? I just want to say, Jonathan, Jason Myers, I'll have you know, doubled his total field goals against Arizona with 2, going all the way to 4. He is 4 for 4. Some kickers do that in a single game, but not Jason Myers. He takes 6 games to get there. Anyway, so what's your
nerds
answer,
are so mad. The nerds are so mad because Jason Myers' field goal percentage is slowly climbing up, and he's
incredibly slowly.
But he's going in the right direction, Nathan, and that's what matters. And you know what? How many mistakes has Jason Myers made this year? How many mistakes has he made this year? 0. The same amount of championships that the Oregon Ducks have. 0.
Hey, Will.
Wow, random shot at Will.
I'm sorry. Whenever I think.
Wait, I have a question. Is Jonathan Bullard still the number 1 pass rusher?
The number 1 pass rusher in the league? Wasn't that the stat?
Yeah. We were so proud of him. Oh, okay.
No,
darn. Maybe he'll lose some snaps.
He did actually do okay in that game, though. I mean, if I'm being totally honest, so his pass rush grade was not great, but he had a 72 grade from PFF. So that's not nothing. That's like
Not
for this
nothing.
defensive line, he's like an all-star.
All right, last one, and I'll get an answer from everybody. From Sam Olson. No, wrong one. Patrick Meany. I don't think I said his name right, but hopefully. Given the recent additions of Dunlap, Snacks, and with Jamal Adams coming back, who will finish with the most sacks this season? Don't limit it to just that. Who's going to finish with the most sacks this year? Dayna?
Is it hopeful to say Dunlap?
No, that was going to be my answer.
I think that's logically right now. I mean, I'm not trying to be disrespectful to the other guys on the team. I'm really not. But we have nothing to show that they're going to improve hugely. So yes, I'm going to say Dunlap.
Ryan?
On the team?
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, if you want to
Jamal
go,
Adams.
you can go field if you want to
Jamal Adams.
Okay.
I'm gonna go with
that is all he's good for after all. He's just
I know, Nathan. I knew you were gonna go there.
Edge rusher, so
is it a hot take to say Darrell Taylor?
Yes.
Oh my god, it is
My God.
Because
I might not see the field.
I think if he comes back, he's gonna be really productive. I think he's gonna be like that mid-season return where it's just like, holy shit, where did this guy come from? I think he's gonna be good.
That will be an incredible surprise.
Thrilled.
I mean, how many sacks does he really need to get to like lead the team?
I mean, that's fair, but between being a rookie and between like coming off of injury and like not even being back yet, like, I mean, who knows if that guy even plays this year?
Yeah, a metal plate in your leg and then showing like deep ankle bend around the edge. Yeah,
That's my
not
prediction.
holding out a lot of hope. I like it though, Evan. You know what? Honestly, that's part of what I like about some of these moves is it means that can be a bonus and not the only hope.
Right.
It's a huge difference.
I just want to say that somebody literally just donated us money, and the text in the super chat was Evan 2020. So I just want to say I'd make a phenomenal presidential candidate.
Please go vote, but please do not go vote for Evan.
Don't vote for Evan.
Please do not.
That is like voting for Pedro. It's not a good place to spend your time. We got to talk about the 49ers. I know it's 9:00 or 10 even for maybe for Evan. I don't know.
No, 9 p.m.
11 for me.
It's 11 for Dayna. Oh my gosh, she's probably on meds too. So we're gonna get some good Dayna here in a second. So the 49ers, they've got a longer injury report than the Seahawks. I'm not gonna go through all of it, but their running back position is it's crazy. Raheem Mostert is out. They went to I think his name is Jeff Wilson last week, who played really well. He is out. They had Tevin Coleman. He has been out, although it's looking like he may come back this week. And then they've got Jermichael Hasty and Jerick McKinnon. And Jermichael Hasty, for people that don't know, is a rookie, and they're pretty high on him, but that's tough. Deebo Samuel is out, as we mentioned before. I think that's a huge, huge loss for that team. They're without Quan Alexander. We know they're already without Nick Bosa and Richard Sherman, and both safeties, Jaquarci Tart and Jimmy Ward. So like, there's a long list of guys, and I think Jason Verrett didn't practice today, but I'm not sure it was injury related. So, all that said, the 49ers are playing their best football this season by a long shot. So, Dayna, how are you feeling about this matchup? Like, when you look at this game, where do your eyes and kind of take you?
Well, it's difficult because I think, like you said, we've seen maybe 3 different versions of this team, right? We've seen the ones that get blown out by the Miami Dolphins, and then the team who comes back and beats the Rams. I think it's a little hard to put your finger on, but what we know for sure is Jimmy Garoppolo still has only thrown for 1,000 yards. And he still only has 7 touchdowns to 4 interceptions. I mean, he's not a threat. We know he's not a threat. And even as bad as the Seahawks defense is, they can handle that, I think, for the most part. Their run game could be a little bit better, but like you said, their run game is completely gutted right now. And so it's interesting when you look on the offensive side of the ball, even with the woes of the Seattle defense, I don't get too overly nervous. Kittle's Kittle, you know what I mean? He is who he is. And if Seattle's smart, and God, I hope they're smart, they just keep someone on him at all times. But for the most part, I think that they don't make the offensive side of the ball doesn't make me nervous. The defensive side of the ball, compared to the way Russell's been playing, I'm not that nervous about that either. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. They have some good players, but they lost their best player at the beginning of the season on the defense, with Bosa being gone. And so I think that when I look at this, it has to be more mistake free than the Arizona game was. But Seattle really controls this one in my mind. The Seattle offense controls this one in my mind.
Interesting. And for folks that don't know, their starting center, Ben Garland, also out. And Hronis Grasu played last week and was awful at center for them. Nathan, Kyle Shanahan's damn good. I mean, there's no other way to look at it other than this guy is making something out of not a lot. Brandon Ayuk, I think, has been a great rookie and a terrific addition to that team. Mm-hmm. What's your view of how the Seahawks match up against this 49ers team?
I mean, I think you kind of nailed it earlier when you said that, really wanting Jamal Adams back for this game. The way he flew around and cleaned up everything in that Atlanta game, right? If he was here and playing like that against this team, that would be huge. And I would say that the matchup was, even though the Seahawks defense isn't strong, I think that could be really favorable for them. Without that, I think they match up against this team like they match up against pretty much any team. It's just a shootout, right? I mean, it's a base race to, whoever gets to 40 first probably wins, and that's kind of the deal. So I don't know that this team really presents anything too unique, especially with their injury situation. And without Jamal Adams, it's hard to say that Seattle really poses any kind of interesting challenge to the Niners.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, Evan. As much as I have tons of respect for Kyle Shanahan, the Seahawks have actually, unlike Sean McVay, they've actually matched up reasonably well. Last year, mm-hmm. A far, more weaponized 49ers offense did not do a lot against the Seahawks. In fact, Seahawks were able to hold no one on the 49ers running back committee rushed for more than 57 yards against the Seahawks last year. And this is a team that does a lot of wide receiver screens and jet sweeps, and KJ Wright and Bobby Wagner. Those guys tend to blow up and make difficult. So is this a game that you think the Seahawks match up well and can feel confident about? Or is this a game that you're like, oh my gosh, this defense can't defend anybody, and this 49ers defense is still playing really well? It's not going to take a lot for this thing to flip the other direction and for the Seahawks to have 2 straight losses.
Yeah, my concern is not really Seattle's run defense on that San Francisco running game. It's more about our consistency in tackling. Like we saw a very poor disciplined tackling football team against the Cardinals. And if that continues against the 49ers, they are going to dink and dunk us and yards after they catch us to death. I don't care how many players they have out. George Kittle is still there. What's his name? Brandon Ayuk. Like they still have playmakers despite being absolutely decimated. I do not want to underestimate this Niners team at all. This is a divisional game still. The Niners may be decimated on both sides of the ball, especially the defensive line. But man, how encouraging would it be to see the Seattle defense show up on Sunday and just have a good end-to-end defensive performance? That would be like one of the most encouraging things we could see on Sunday, in my opinion. Russell Wilson will most likely rebound. I think the offense will be productive, but man, if they can have a strong defensive performance against this 49ers offense, I'm feeling really good.
Yeah, I'd like to be 6 feet tall on Sunday. It doesn't mean it's gonna happen. I mean,
it's not that hard. You just wake up and you're over 6 feet tall.
Yeah, no, you don't have my genes, Mr. Viking.
D Ford is out too, by the way. We should remember that. D Ford, he's out through week 11.
So yeah, I mean, it would take the other half of the show to just go through their injuries. Yeah, I'll tell you one thing we haven't talked about that I think is meaningful for this game. Snacks Harrison, you signed this guy to the practice squad 2 weeks ago. Every other team in the NFL has tried to sign him off your practice squad. He stuck around. You cut Anthony Rush today, the defensive tackle. I was hoping to see Snacks Harrison move to the active roster. Logical thought there is if he's going to be activated, it'll happen on Saturday, and it won't show up because if he was to get injured or something, you'd have to put him on IR, so they'll slow roll it. I think with Ben Garland out and the middle of that line vulnerable, especially the right side of that line, I think Snacks Harrison could be a sneaky big addition for this game. If you get Snacks and you get Jamal Adams, I feel a heck of a lot better.
What are the chances of Jamal Adams playing right now in your gut?
75%.
Really? That's pretty high.
I was thinking 60-40. I think that he has a good chance of playing.
Even with not practicing today.
Mm-hmm. Like I said, Wednesday injury reports don't bother me as much.
What if he doesn't practice tomorrow?
Ooh, it goes way down then.
40%. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So tomorrow's really the day.
Yeah.
Then. Okay.
Yep.
And I think the thing that is maybe, other than the things I just mentioned, that would be most encouraging is like Russell Wilson, he left that game taking the full brunt of responsibility for losing it. And I don't think it was fully his fault at all. We all know that it was a lot of people made mistakes in that game, but he contributed a lot to that loss, more than he usually would. He wanted to play the next day. I feel like this is a guy that doesn't generally have 2 bad games in a row. This is a guy that is itching to get back out there and has actually played reasonably well against the 49ers. So yeah, I think that's, between generally in the NFL, the better quarterback wins, generally speaking. And there's no doubt that the Seahawks have a massive advantage at that position going into this game. So I think that's the most encouraging part.
I just want to say I completely agree with that, Brian, and that's why the Cardinals won on Sunday.
For Christ's sake.
You're right. Kyler Murray outplayed Russell Wilson.
Oh, totally.
End of the day, he did.
He looked really good on Sunday. Like I know all this narrative and storyline is around Seattle shooting themselves in the foot, but I thought Kyler looked good.
Dayna, did you have something you want to say?
I'm saying nothing because Evan and I actually got to a place where we agreed on a lot of things, and I'm trying to not rock the boat, but his obsession with Kyler Murray is annoying as shit to me. So it's like, here's the thing. It's like, yes, the kid looks great when he can run around like, the Tasmanian devil because his line is, I'm just we'll just let that be. So
had a real pretty ball to Hopkins.
I agree. No, I don't think the kid's untalented. I think the kid has a lot of talent, but I don't know. It's just Evan's level because he lives in Arizona. So he's like, up here. I'm just like, whatever. I don't have time. Whatever. I don't have time.
He's just trying to find your weak spots, Danny. You cannot let him know what bothers you because he'll just come back to him.
He already knows. That happened like a month ago when I lost my crap. I wouldn't let anyone talk bad about Marshawn Lynch. He's like, there it is.
Let me give you a little tip. You got to go on the offensive. So Kyler Murray, he will have bad games. You just got to make sure to remind Evan when those.
Well,
do we want to have a conversation about how Marshawn Lynch was the least important part of their Super Bowl team?
Oh,
Or should
no.
we say that
right.
for another podcast?
I'm ready to have that conversation.
No. Let's do predictions. Let's do predictions.
Bye, Dana.
Yeah, no. I can't handle that. I won't sleep tonight again. So,
Oh, man.
Nathan, we're gonna start with you. What is your score prediction for this game?
You know I'm never ready for this.
I'm never.
I'm not ready for this. I'm gonna go 34-28 Seahawks.
That's a good score. I like that one. Evan.
No, go to Dana. I need time to think.
Okay, Dana.
I'm going to do 31-17 Seattle.
Ooh. So who is the
I think
defensive?
Russ going to be mad.
But so the 31, that's easy, right? But the 17, who shows up to keep the Niners at 17? Do you want to call your shot on like a defensive MVP?
I'm sorry, what?
Do you want to like call your shot on a defensive MVP, or like how does that happen?
No, it just kind of comes back to a couple of the games earlier in the season. They held them at the end. Do you know what I mean? They made those big plays at the end when they needed to. And I think even KJ said something about that. So I think the Seattle defense is going to come out a little stronger. I do think Adams will play, and I think that'll be a huge part of it. But I still think we'll probably get kittled a couple times just because that's what tight ends do to Seattle sometimes. So, and then they'll hold one. But I think, and I have absolutely no faith in Garoppolo. So I think that Russell's going to come out mad. He's going to score a lot, and then they hold San Francisco back.
I'm going to go with 34-20. Did anybody say that? I hope not. 34-20 Seahawks.
See, he agrees with me.
Yeah. I'm not going to say the score that's in my head. I will say that the Seahawks will win 23-22.
I almost
Why
went with
so
a Niners
low?
win.
I think the Seahawks are going to have more trouble scoring this game than we want. And I hope that's not true, but that's a concern I have. And I'm really hoping that the 49ers also struggle to score. If not, I will say if the 49ers score over 30 points in this game, I think the Seahawks take the L.
Fair.
So,
Is this a must-win game?
Their way with it.
No, it's not must win, but here's the thing: you go 0-3 in the division if you drop this game. Right? No,
0-2.
Sorry. Cardinals are 2-0. That's what is on my mind. But yeah, dropping your first two division games is a pretty big deal.
Mm-hmm. I don't think it's like a dagger to the season in any way, though.
I think
not with the way the rest of the season lines up.
Yeah, their schedule the rest of the way is, other than next like 3 games after this, is so easy. I don't think that's the case. But if you want to get number 1 seed, depends on what you talk about must win. But
that's kind of that. Maybe I should have stated that then. So with the expectations of a number 1 seed, is Sunday a must win game?
I think so. It's not like truly must win, but I think it's pretty close.
To feel comfortable, I think you need to win.
But that's the thing, the Seahawks don't do anything comfortably. Like, they're not just going to roll to 14 or 15 wins. I mean, they should be 6-0 right now. They absolutely should be 6-0 after last week, and they're not. You always regret those. Always. You look back at those games, and you're like, how did we drop that game? So, yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I think this is huge, and God knows, Evan, at least you and I have to beware come Sunday. If anything goes wrong for the Seahawks, we'll have to call witness protection to make sure we don't get mauled by by the Bang Bang Gang.
Bang, bang, and your gang. Whoop, whoop, whoop. 4-3.
On that note, thanks everybody for tuning in. Have a wonderful, wonderful week. Please join over at patreon.com/hawkblogger. If you haven't already, subscribe here. Click the bell to get notified when we go live. I do plan on doing a podcast with Softy this week. I was just too lazy last week and couldn't bring myself to do it, but we'll try to make that happen. We will have a post-game show. And let's hope to God it is a celebratory one, because, man, it will be fun. So Seahawks face the 49ers. I believe it's a 1 o'clock start or right around then this weekend. Take care of yourselves and go Hawks.